Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Eric, and I'd like to welcome you to this session brought to you by Humanitarian Global. With me, I have two people I would like to introduce, and I will start with Anthony. Anthony, are you there with us?
Yes, I can hear you, Eric.
You can give us a small introduction about yourself and let us know more about Humanitarian Global.
Okay, thank you so much to Eric and all of our participants today. My name is Anthony Nkuhi, the Academic Registrar at Humanitarian Global. We are grateful to be hosting this session today, where we have a lot for you when it comes to the topic of the day. And before we do that, I would like to just to brief you on who we are and what we do. So I would like even to share my screen here briefly to take you through that segment. I hope you can see my screen, and thank you so much. And also, if you are getting us loud and clear, you can give us a message there on the chat section so that we can be able to know that you are getting us. So you can give us a message there, and then that would be a very good confirmation that you can hear us. So as I said, this is a Humanitarian Global, and thank you once again for joining this session today. And just to understand on who we are as an institute, we are based in Nairobi, Kenya, and our main focus has been to work with humanitarian professionals and also development professionals like you today, so that we can help in building your capacity. So that is what we focus on, and we have a wide range of areas that we do cover in terms of what do we really focus on. So we do training and learning. That is one of the areas that we focus on. And under the category of training and learning, this is where we ensure that we can provide you with online courses, training programs. We also organize for webinars like the one that we have today. We do also organize for training workshops. And that means if you are here and you might be leading a team and you want them to build their capacity, you can always reach out to us. And then you're going to be able to train with us. So that means we leave all the doors open for you. In case you have a team, in case you want to come as an individual, you can always reach out to us, and we're going to organize a training for you. We also do organize for conferences touching on humanitarian aspects and also development aspects, and also support capacity development and also team building activities. So that is what we cover under the category of training and learning. Secondly, we do work with a pool of experts, and these are the experts who are our trainers, our consultants, and that means you as an individual, you as an organization, we can also work within that capacity of consultancy work. So maybe you want to seek professional advice, you can always reach out to us. Now we're going to avail our team so that we can work together in addressing or maybe helping you in the project that you're working on. Thirdly, we also ensure that through our infrastructure, we can share it with you in terms of you sharing your project that you're doing. You might be running an NGO out there, CBO, you're doing an initiative to better the humanitarianism. So that means you can share it with us, and then we can publish the same on our social media pages, our website, and so on, so that we can publicize your initiative. And then lastly, but not least of what we do, we ensure that we can avail you with humanitarian resources. And these are the blogs that we do write. We do write blogs each and every day. We do publish them on the website. And that means we would always want to keep you informed. We want you to keep on getting to learn, understanding what is happening based on the current situations in the humanitarian setting, and how we manage to do so. That is through the blogs. In addition to that, we also have a new segment, and this is where we say that we want to build a community of humanitarians, a community of professionals, and we have managed to do so. We have managed to pioneer the platform, and that means if you go to our website, you can easily find that link to the community. And today, if you are joining this meeting, ensure that before you leave the meeting, be part of the Humanitarian Global Community. And this is where, so you can see there is a HG community. So make sure that you can click on that link. So you're going to be prompted to sign up. So make sure that you can sign up. it's an easy process. Make sure that you can feed your email, choose a username, make sure there's no spacing, your full name, and then a password that you're going to be using for you to log in. So this is a platform that would give you the chance to link up with other professionals. We believe in information sharing. There's something out there, maybe someone like Kazim from Abuja, Nigeria, you might be there, you are a professional. We have someone else like Mustaf from Mogadishu, and we need to discuss on some of these areas. There's a lot that we can share amongst ourselves, and this is the platform that would give you that chance. So once you've created an account, you're going to find that on the menu, we do have very many forums. So make sure that you can join. So for instance, we have one on disaster risk reduction and management and emergencies. So that is a forum that you can join. Make sure that once you join, you can introduce yourself by replying to the first topic. That means once I sign in, I'll be able to see a reply button. So introduce yourself so that we may also know who you are and your country and the organization that you're working for. And then after that, you'll be following up with the topics. You can see like today, based on the webinar that we are going to have today, we have a topic on SBCC in emergencies and also early warning systems. So that is what that is the theme for today. So we even want, even after the meeting, in case there are questions that will not have addressed, go and post them there so that we can continue giving you responses. We would also want to extend the conversation way beyond from the 2-hour session. So that means that is the platform for you to be able to post that. And with that said, this is a platform that you need to be part of. I can see our team, they're sharing the link on the chat section. So make sure that you can follow that link as early as now. Make sure that you can sign up. It's totally free. You just need to sign up and then you'll be connecting and interacting with other participants from different parts of the world. And as I wind up, because I can see the time is not on our side, I would like to say what we present here is just a snippet of what we can offer when it comes to training. So this is not all. This is just a tip of the iceberg. So the whole iceberg is lying here with us, and that would mean that we would like to encourage you follow up with us, enroll for our programs. For instance, when it comes to disaster risk reduction and management, we do have a certificate level course, and that is a course that you can be able to undertake for a period of 3 months, and all the details, you would find them on the website, and this is where you're going to even make sure that you can choose that course. You can see the course outlines, you can see the details for you on how to register. And in case you are facing a challenge, make sure that you can chat with our team there on the chat section, and that they're going to help you. So this is one of the courses. Make sure that you can join our courses, and we will be taking you through the outline in the course of the presentation so that you can understand what we cover. And then for you to apply, it's very easy. So with that said, I would like to say thank you so much for joining. And as part of the rules, let's refrain from sharing our emails on the chat section. Let's use the chat for feedback. Giving us information as we go on with the session. And then for questions, purposely use the post them on the Q&A. So let's stay away or refrain from sharing our emails, our personal numbers on the chat section, unless maybe you want to share them with our team as the host panelist so that we can follow up with your inquiries. So thank you so much. And now I would like to invite back Eric, who is going to welcome the facilitator of the day so that we can get into the session. So thank you so much, and all the best as you follow up with us. Remember, it's too early as well to share the link with the participants, your fellow colleagues, friends, professionals that you know within your network. You can post it on your WhatsApp status so that they can join, and we can all get to benefit. So thank you so much, and all the best as you follow up with this session.
Thank you for that, Anthony. Our next key speaker is our facilitator for the day. Marlene, are you there with us? You can start by giving us a small introduction, then we can start off the session.
Thank you very much, Eric. My name is Marlene Kawira Kenywa. I am a meal and DRRM facilitator at Humanitarian Global, and I appreciate your I appreciate your presence here in this webinar. Today, we are going to discuss a very important topic because communication is key, not only in emergencies, but in all other projects. So we are going to dive a little bit into social and behavioral change communication for emergency preparedness. And we will also have a look into the early warning systems. So in this session, what you can expect is to understand a little bit into detail more about social and behavioral change communication, which we usually refer to as SBCC in emergencies. So we're going to explore aspects of social and behavioral change communication during emergency, as well as understanding early warning systems, their types, and how to rely on them. So we will also dive a little bit into some of the components of SBCC so that you can be able to explore how you can use them to your advantage, especially during emergencies. So as we go directly there, we want to say that in most cases, we refer to social behavioral change communication as SBCC. And we are just going to look into some of the things that are usually delivered from the implementation kit. And in most cases, it's called an I kit because it's called implementation kit. And SBCC refers to social behavioral change and communication. So during emergency, we understand that communication has to be very clear and it is supposed to be very reliable so that it can minimize some of the hazards related to the spread of rumors or sometimes unverified information, which can affect the community, even affect your ability to implement effectively. So communication is always crucial, especially in addressing matters to do with behaviors and also social aspects, especially when it comes to things like health risks that precede and sometimes follow an emergency. And as such must be integrated into response agendas from the outset and also at the onset of every emergency response action. And as we said, emergencies differ. Sometimes emergency can be localized, sometimes they can be, especially when you talk about natural disasters, those are more widely located because sometimes they affect either people who are adjacent to the shores of an ocean, of a lake due to tectonic activities, sometimes movement, sometimes rise in temperature on the ocean floor. So all these are things to consider while diving on the kind of emergency that you're dealing with. So one of the most critical aspects is understanding the situation to begin with. You assess it with your team, you're able to understand exactly how you're going to go about it so that you can be able to well rely on early warning systems to inform your communities so that they can be well prepared, so that you can be able to train on some of the survival skills, some of the skills that you might need the community to help during the emergency activities in case of any disaster. So it is always critical to ensure that communication efforts are harmonized, they are also relevant, timely, and in most aspects, they're supposed to be financially supported. So because sometimes they might involve movement from one place to another to distribute some of that information. And also it should be aligned with the preparedness of the technical teams, because we always rely on fast responders, especially when it comes to matters of disasters, because sometimes people get injured, there is also situations where they result into loss of life. So a strong and united voice heard through various sources can determine whether an emergency spirals out of control or is brought into check as soon as possible. So in most cases, a well-coordinated and timely and also strategic communication strategy, which you're going to get a little bit into detail, and also the implementation of those specific plans that are being planned by the team. They also manage people's expectation during an emergency, before, and sometimes even after an emergency. So, and also assist the response efforts of the technical teams, the field teams. So you find that affected communities from time to time, they can be engaged and supported to make the required changes, because we all understand that sometimes rumors can affect the effectiveness or the efficacy of that specific response activity or emergency that is currently underway. So rumors can be detected early if you have a well-coordinated team, and barriers of desired behaviors can be identified and addressed promptly. And that's why we are going to see how we can be able to leverage some of the existing tools, especially in this internet and social media era. There are always ways where we can rely on the use of media and also social media to inform people with using the right information, using the people like influencers in those specific communities to relay information. So why is social behavioral change communication important in emergencies? So you find that in most cases, communities always need to be informed. They need to be motivated, and they also need to be equipped in order to practice the necessary protective behaviors. And this can be achieved through effective social behavioral change communication programming. So you find that social and behavioral change communication always plays a very critical role, especially when it comes to addressing matters related to behavioral and social aspect, especially things like disease prevention sometimes and control, because we remember that disease outbreak are also a very critical, common emergency, and it happens in different areas. We've had cholera outbreaks, we've had typhoid outbreaks. There is even the COVID-19 outbreak that we have recently been trying to tackle in the past 2 years or so. So you find that in particular, most of the social behavioral change communications can be able to provide accurate, clear, and relevant, and sometimes even timely information to the public on how to contain the emergency and protect themselves. That's why on the onset of COVID-19, most people were requested to ensure that they use masks and they wash their hands or use sanitizers. They avoid social interactions to avoid the spread of diseases. These are just some of the things that help when it comes to providing accurate, clear, and relevant, and also timely information to the general public. So social behavioral change communication can also help identify and address some of the myths and misconceptions that may lead to detrimental practices. So we all know how sometimes when things are perceived and wrong information is passed, it can be able to affect the effectiveness of even how you tackle a situation. So social behavioral change communication can help even maintain the public trust, because you're able to give them things that enable them and sometimes help their lives and that of their loved ones. They also help prepare communities for emergency response actions. That's why at the beginning of the pandemic, very many people are rushing into the food stores to get enough foods for their family to avoid going out from time to time. There is also a good SBCC social behavioral communication strategy can also reassure the public, trying to tell them that things are being handled, and we hope that you're going to be able soon. So social behavioral change communication can also help support communities and sometimes countries and also regions to even recover, rebuild after an emergency, because at the end of the day, lives are affected, and we all value people's livelihoods. So at the end of the day, we try to form as much initiatives that can be able to help communities build back stronger than they even were, and even learn and get more prepared in case a similar situation might occur in future. So speaking of emergency, there is also critical areas when it comes to emergency communication. At the end of the day, we all have to rely on credible sources of information, and that's why we have been talking about early warning system. And early warning systems, just to clarify, they help, especially when it comes to identifying impending disasters. For example, when we rely on meteorological department to tell us more about the weather, or geological department to tell us about the movements of the earth and how it can affect different areas. So these are some of the things that we help to try and mitigate or reduce some of the effects that can happen in case a disaster related to that situation occurs. So at the beginning of an emergency, the role of social behavioral change communication is to engage the public, support them in making informed decisions about their risks, and also encourage them to respond effectively to those risks. So you find that the communication and related pillars will always ensure that response activities are accompanied by appropriate communication interventions. So key areas in which emergency communication pillar may intervene might include, some of you who are well conversant with the emergency response cycle, you know that coordination is a very important aspect. So you have to ensure that you communicate effectively. If it is a matter of gathering information, we always rely on participatory approaches so that in the process you can also be able to rely on well-informed information. You are able to know exactly the culture so that you ensure that some of your efforts do not collide with the beliefs and the norms of the community you are serving. So something key is also during coordination, you have to rely on information that is understanding the number of affected population, understanding some of the key actors, being able to get information from other organizations who have been there before you or who are among the first responders, so that you can be able to ensure that there is coordinated efforts to avoid duplication of efforts. So another key place is community mobilization and action. So community mobilization and action always relies on being able to tell people how exactly you need them, how you need their efforts, how they can contribute to some of the activities that are being carried out by the organization. So in most cases, we need each other. So even developmental efforts rely on the ability of beneficiaries to cooperate. So even if you want to help them come up with a solution, you have to tell them exactly how you need their support, how you can be able to support their efforts also, because it's always a two-way street. You cannot over-rely on them. And in most cases, organizations also do not want the over-reliance of beneficiaries in case you people leave that field to another different field, or the time for the intervention comes to an end. At the end of the day, you will leave. So if they have over-relied on your effort, it means that you're going to affect the stability of the community once you leave. So in most cases is building their capacity to be able to tackle some of these situations on themselves. So another key area in which emergency communication pillars may intervene is the message development and dissemination. So at the end of the day, you remember that you have to look at your audience. Who are the people reading this information? Who are the people who are supposed to use that information? And to ensure that it is culturally appropriate, it is also in the local language so that the locals can be able to understand it without misinterpretation. So emergency communication pillars may intervene in such areas where you create information that can be accessed by the locals and be able to use them to their advantage. And then I have emphasized on the issue of capacity development. So capacity development relies on the ability of even the beneficiaries to be able to absorb some of the skills and the knowledge that you're training them. So you're supposed to create appropriate information to train them also, build their skills, boost their capacity, use some of their abilities to your advantage. So for example, someone is very good at relaying information, and there may be leaders and community elders. These are some of the people that you need to train when it comes to the distribution or dissemination of some of the most important information. So that, because most people are dependent on going to them and asking about some of the most important aspects. Another key aspect is monitoring and evaluation. How do you monitor those efforts? How do you monitor if some of the people are being able to access the information that you are providing, and how are they using it to improve the situation? So these are just some of the key areas in which emergency communication pillars may intervene, especially when it comes to emergency situation settings. So another key area is communication gathering. At the end of the day, most humanitarian efforts rely on data. That's why we find that research is a very critical aspect, and sometimes we rely on research to inform some of the things that we give to the beneficiaries, to the general public. So sometimes you might be relying on governments, on the government of the country where you're working. Sometimes you might rely on regions, because sometimes we find that some disasters are very big, that they overwhelm even governments. So it is always important to ensure that you have the right information that is verified and even evidence-based. So preparing and responding successfully to those specific emergency require evidence-based frameworks, things that have been implemented in other similar situations before, and also well-informed and verified, reliable information. So, and that is where we come to early warning systems. So early warning system, we find that it is an adaptive measure, especially for climate change, where it uses integrated communication systems to help, for example, communities or sometimes even organizations prepare for hazardous events, especially climate-related events. That is where we talk of things like tsunamis, floods, because we find that those are the kind of activities that affect large populations. So a successful early warning system always enables organizations and communities be in a position to save lives, sometimes save jobs, save land and infrastructure, and sometimes even support long-term sustainability. So you find that an early warning system can be defined as a set of capacities needed to generate and disseminate timeful and meaningful warning information of possible extreme events that might result into disasters. As I said, for example, floods, droughts. There is the issue of forest fires that has been affecting very many places in the world. And there is also the issue of earthquakes and tsunamis. And you find that all these events threaten people's lives, and they depend on some of the actions and knowledge of humanitarian and development professionals to keep it under control. So just a brief of getting deeper into early warning systems, you find that there are components of effective early warning systems, and they're usually considered within a holistic approach. And in most cases, they are comprised of 4 operational components or elements. So one of them, which is the main one, is the hazards are detected, monitored, and forecast, and the hazard warnings are developed. So remember that different communities might be speaking different languages. So you can find that there is an impending tsunami that might affect the coast of, for example, West Africa. So for different countries, you'll find that you might have to translate that information so that it can be able to communicate the right information, not only to the organizations, but also to the communities. So it is important that once hazards are detected and monitored, and for example, the hazard warnings are developed, you find that it is important to develop them in a way that all or most of the people affected might be able to understand the warning and prepare effectively. So the second operational component is that the risk is analyzed and the information is incorporated in warning messages. So you find, dependent on where those different countries are placed, you might find that different countries might be affected differently, dependent on their capacity, dependent on their planning, and also dependent on their ability to mitigate such circumstances. So another key important aspect is warnings are issued. So remember that warnings are issued by a designated authoritative source, and sometimes we rely on government or organizations like the UN and other big organizations to disseminate this important information in a timely fashion to, for example, authorities and publics and public people or communities at risk. So you find that after these communities have been able to receive this information, that is where we form community-based emergency plans to be able to respond to the warnings and also reduce the impact on people's lives and livelihoods. So those are some of the key components on how early warning systems are considered effective. So there are different types of early warning systems, and some of them are dependent on different categories. So the first category is relating on either is it a single or a multi-hazard early warning system. So you find that a single hazard early warning system is one that usually addresses only one type of hazard. And that is where most community early warning systems are based, because they detect hazards that affect their community. So you find that they might be only monitoring one aspect. So for example, people living on the ocean line or on a lake near a large water body will be dependent on information that tells them specifically about floods. So you might find that even the community or community-based organizations might help form their own early warning system. And then there is the multi-hazard early warning system, which addresses several hazards or impacts or similar or sometimes even different type in context, where hazardous events may occur alone or simultaneously, because sometimes you might find that things might occur twice. There might be very heavy rainfall at the same time there is flooding ongoing. So you find that there is a number of things that are required to be done, or you might find that there is a tsunami at the same time there was different flooding. So you might find that sometimes hazardous events might occur simultaneously. So a multi-hazard early warning system has the ability to warn either one or more hazards, and it helps to increase the efficiency and consistency of warnings through coordinated and sometimes even compatible mechanisms and capacities, because you find that, for example, meteorological departments, ministries of health and agriculture operate early warning systems that address a variety of hazardous events. So, for example, we can be talking of things like droughts, and you find that later in the year, there might be an issue of floods. So it is important for things like agricultural ministries to talk to the farmers and rely this important information that might affect their planting or harvesting patterns and enable them to prepare to minimize loss when it comes to their activities. So this is just an example of a category of early warning systems. Then there is the early warning systems that are reliable on the types of hazards. So you find that in the recent past, we have seen that early warning systems have been developed and implemented for things like geological hazards, like I was talking about earlier, that are dependent on the geological movement of the earth. So this is where we find things like tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic activity, and sometimes even landslides. Then there is the hydrometeorological hazards, which include severe weather in both land and at sea. So you find that these are things like floods, droughts, hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones, tornadoes, sometimes cold and heat waves. We just had that Europe the other day experienced a new heat wave, which even affected some of the general activities that go on a day-to-day basis. So there is also the issue of forest fires, because forest fires affect different communities, especially there have been forest fires happening in the United States. So there is also the issue of biological hazards, including things like insect plague. Sometimes it's a matter of locust outbreaks, and sometimes even harmful algae blooms that might affect people and cause poisoning. So there are also health hazards that are dependent on vector-borne diseases, sometimes viruses. As we were talking about earlier, vector-borne diseases are like typhoids, they're like cholera, and there is also the issue of viruses like the COVID-19. And there are also other types of diseases that pose a health threat to different communities. So there is also the one that detects hazards that are related to pests and diseases, or especially when it comes to crops and livestock, because these are very important aspects that might affect even the food security of a community and sometimes even a country. So speaking of early warning systems, there is still a different category, which is the level at which that early warning system is operated. As I had said earlier, you might find that a community only relies on information that might affect them. So for example, if they live along the ocean, it will be key to monitor the rise of ocean waters from time to time, so that they can be able to move to safer grounds in case of any emergency. So there is that community or people-centered early warning systems, which are usually operated more at local levels by a municipal government or a community. And you find that the most typical systems of this kind include or address things like floods. So there is also the national early warning systems, which is usually developed by different countries or states. So which is operated by a national level governmental agency, like a meteorological department, a geological observatory or institute. Sometimes it's the health or agricultural ministry, as I mentioned earlier. Then now there is the regional systems, which are usually operated at a more regional level. So two examples that are very common and key are the FuseNet, which usually refers to the Famine Early Warning System Network, which is usually operated by the States of America in various regions in the world. And there is also the European Meteo Alarm, which coordinates early warning information to European countries. So there is also the global systems operated at international or global levels by international organizations such as the UN, and you find even the WHO, FAO, and you find that these are very critical in addressing some of the most important aspects, especially when it comes to health and agriculture. So something that is very key, it is always important to know the kind of early warning system that is available to you and your team, so that you can be able to rely on it effectively, rely on it to be able to address issues of the community that you are serving. So at the end of the day, there are different elements when it comes of early warning system efficiency. So you find that in 2003, experts, especially in the second International Early Warning Conference, they introduced the current concept of efficient or people-centered early warning system based on 4 elements. So these specifically are based on people-centered early warning systems. And that is why you find that disaster risk knowledge is based on the systematic collection of data and disaster risk assessment. And disaster risk assessment is one of the topics that is taught very well at the DRRM certificate level here at the Humanitarian Global. So you find that it is important to understand the risk, understand how it can affect the communities that you serve, so that you can be able to rely reliable information to the community, so that they can be able to contribute effectively towards the emergency efforts. So as we progress in this session, we would also like you to put feedback in the comments of the chat section, and also remember to share any question that you may need answered during this session. So in case you also need clarification on an aspect that we are talking about, also remember to add it in the Q&A section. So another key important factor is the dissemination and communication by an official source, and also of authoritative, timely, accurate, actionable warnings and associated information on the likelihood and impact. At some point, we understand that our governments also share very critical information when it comes to aspects of, for example, a drought or floods that are affecting a certain community. You might find that they might have to resort to other communications channels to communicate effectively to the population that is being affected, so that they can be able to also actively be prepared. So another important aspect is the preparedness at all levels to respond to warnings that have been received over time. So it is always important to ensure that you run a very effective people-centered early warning system, so that you can be able to have reliable information to the communities you serve. So always do research and know which early warning systems are able to conduct, to give reliable information to your organization and to your communities, to the communities that you serve. So another important and critical aspect is of communication during emergencies is that in most cases, you find that in emergencies, developing activities that increase both efficacy and sometimes self-efficacy is especially important, because you find that sometimes perceived threat is already likely to be high. So it is always critical that people understand exactly what to do in order to reduce that threat. So in particular, you find that interventions should always provide clear, accurate, believable, humane, and respectful information. When we talk about respectful, I have talked about culturally appropriate communication messages. So always remember to ensure that your information is culturally sensitive. It does not cause any backlash from the community. So it is always important to gather the right information and understand exactly how that community prefers to be addressed. So these are just some of the things that will ensure the efficiency of whatever implementation you are conducting for that emergency activity. So you find that the information should always be about risk reduction behaviors and their effectiveness without escalating fear and panic, so that you can be able to increase the effectiveness or efficacy of the activities that you are conducting. Another thing is that intervention should also provide tools, skills, and services that support people's engagement in risk reduction behaviors. Earlier we talked about capacity development of the communities itself, and that's why you find that interventions should also provide those tools and skills and services in order to support them to be able to even handle some of those situations on their own. Another key important factors is that interventions should maintain a certain level of risk perception, especially when emergencies start to subside and people no longer sense the danger, even when it still exists. This can be given by a good example of the COVID-19 pandemic. A number of times, this restriction tried to be lowered, but you find that once the restrictions were lowered, the increase in, there was also a direct increase in the number of cases being reported. So that is where you find that sometimes the community has forgotten that they're supposed to take precautionary measures. So it is always important to maintain that certain level of risk perception. Tell them that it is still a danger, steps are still being taken, and it is important for them to also be careful in this way or the other. So when it comes to communication, especially social behavioral change communication, we rely on theories, and some of these theories have been developed over time, studied by experts over time. And these are some of the theories that have been able to help create some of the frameworks that are used, especially when it comes to communicating at different levels, not only emergency, but also other programmatic levels. So you find that behavioral change theories always help us to understand why people act the way they do and how their behaviors can change over time to the advantage of being able to help the efficient running of initiatives and sometimes interventions. So they are therefore useful tools to inform social behavioral change communication program design, and also to highlight key areas on which to focus. You find that they also help provide indicators that you can use to monitor progress and change within the community that you're serving. So you find that there are actually more than three. There are I think 6 of them, but in this session, we are only going to focus on 3. That is the social mediated crisis communication model. We call it the MSCC. And there is the elaboration likelihood model and the social cognitive learning theory. So diving directly into the social mediated crisis communication model, we live in an era of, I can call it internet, in an internet era. So you find that as a result, this model is very useful for communication efforts in emergency situation, where when defining the at-risk population and how to best reach them. So in a world increasingly connected via social media, you find that information exchanged on different platforms during emergencies have the potential to engage with multiple types of public audience. So although inactive members may also be connected to social media indirectly through other members or traditional media. So you find that at some point you might find that some of the people who have accessed that information might still be able to relay it indirectly to other members who are not even on social media. So you find that these individuals may also require different messaging channels that than influencers and people like followers. So you find that this theory usually provides a model that identifies characteristics of audiences and also helps them to refine communication strategies and even some very important components. So you find that social media tools usually serve as an integral or critical and significant component when it comes to crisis response. So you find that most of us, even right now, we can say that we are relying on the internet to pass this information. This shows that you can be able to rely on other media channels to pass information to beneficiaries, to communities that are being affected. So you find that social media tools are integrated in most parts of our lives. And you find that most of us have or rely on a social media tool. Some people use WhatsApp, there is Facebook, there is LinkedIn, there is so many social media platforms where one can select one of their choice. So you find that this model usually holds that in the content of a crisis, multiple public or sometimes even different audiences exist in the world of social media. So you find that these people include influencers. In most cases, we refer to influencers as people who create or sometimes even share information that others access. So you find that there is these specific people that you follow in order to gain a specific information about something that is of interest to you. And you find that these influencers also have followers. So you find that these are also individuals who follow those influencers in order to access information that they disseminate. So from time to time, you might find that there are political influencers who tell us more about political situations of our countries of the world, and sometimes they compare and share some of the information that most of us do not have access to. But through them, we are able to get more of those information. Sometimes even social media sometimes even boost family communications, because you find that people also follow their loved ones in order to keep in touch with how they are doing and maybe understand how things are going on their end. Plus, there are also inactive members. So those are individuals who do not directly access that specific information from social media, but rather seek information from other sources or are exposed to information from social media indirectly from other people who might be talking about it at different levels. So it might even be a friends meeting and you're discussing about things that either happened or things that are happening or things that were in the television yesterday or in the radio or in the newspaper in the morning. So that is how indirectly information is shared from one person to the other. And that is what we refer to as the social mediated crisis communication model. So once you understand it, you can be able to use it to your advantage to ensure the efficacy of some of the emergency response efforts, sometimes even the disaster management efforts like mitigating. Sometimes it's about being able to develop the community to build back better. So it is always important to understand the best theory to use that is more applicable and relevant to your key audience and sometimes even target beneficiaries. So the other one that we had listed is the elaboration likelihood model. And you find that this model proposes that there are two pathways through which messages are processed and sometimes even distributed from one person to the other. So one pathway is characterized by fast judgment made by individuals that are based on simple associations that they have. And this might be positive or negative. So it does not rely on positivity only or negativity only. So you find that such some persuasive communication messages may often lead to temporary changes, for example, in people's attitudes, beliefs, how they perceive a certain issue. So you find that the other pathway demands more scrutiny or elaboration and time to process the information also. So although this pathway takes longer and more effort, you find that the change in attitudes or beliefs tend to last longer. So once people understand exactly, for example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, once people understood exactly why it was important to wear a mask, you find that even some of the governments lowered the restrictions, because you find that people, even after the restrictions were lowered, people still continued wearing the mask because they understood how important it is to protect themselves and their families. So in emergency situations, where the limited time frame may affect an individual's motivation to think deliberately and sometimes even critically about a message, you find that the elaboration likelihood model can be used to identify topics where persuasive communication could mostly be effective. So it is always important to look at the situation and find the most effective theory that applies to the community you serve. Something else about the just a brief about the elaboration likelihood model is that according to this theory, you find that behaviors are influenced by three specific factors. One is the attitude towards the desired behavior. So you find that this is usually determined by the individual's belief that a beneficial outcome will occur if a particular behavior is practiced. So for example, we all started learning that use of sanitizer and use of soap during the COVID-19 pandemic would prevent the spread of diseases, and wearing the mask and being able to keep yourself social distance, as we call it, though it is more of physical distancing. So it became an important factor once people understood exactly why it was important to help mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. So another factor is the subjective norms. So you find that this relates to the individual's beliefs about what people in their reference groups or peers, family, or social network think about the desired behavior, as well as their motivation to comply with these norms. So you find that due to one reason or the other, mostly people have things that they tend to believe. And sometimes they value how their peers or sometimes even family or the people they value look look at that specific behavior. So you find that it is more of how they feel around the people by doing certain characteristics. If sometimes people reduce the way they talk or the way they joke because they are in a group of people so that they can be perceived differently. So another thing is the perceived behavioral control. So this refers to the individual's belief about his or her capacity to practice the desired behavior. For example, if I do this, I might be effective. For example, if we are able to do this at the field level, more people can be able to be. So you find that this is the belief where people believe that something is going to happen in relation to practicing a specific or a desired behavior. So it's the same thing that applies to children. If you are good in school, then if you perform well in your exam, we're going to take you at the park, or we're going to take a visit to your favorite cousin's place. So it's more of a perceived behavior control. You're using incentives to kind of attract people towards doing a specific thing that might affect them in one way or the other. So in particular, this theory tells us that intervention should always highlight the short-term benefits of the desired behavior as this improves attitudes towards that specific behavior. And it also tells us that interventions should target close social networks to promote a desired behavior and also improve the individual's perceived norms. So one last but not least was the social cognitive learning theory. So you find that this acknowledges the constant interaction that exists between an individual and his or her environment, both structural and social, and sometimes we even refer to the professional one, to shape behavior. So you might find that people have these three personal cognitive factors that are affected by the environment influence behavior. So you find that observational learning, you might find that when people are in a group, you find that they might behave different as compared to when they are alone. So observational learning is where individuals are more likely to perform a desired behavior if they observe others modeling that specific behavior and experiencing the subsequent positive rewards. So for example, these are some of the things that form some of the most effective years of a child, because that is the point where they are growing. So you find that they observe how adults do things. This is how they eat. This is where they do this, and this is where they do that. So you find that children mostly, before they are able to read for themselves, they are dependent on observing what other people do. So you find that if they see that when someone does this, they receive a clap. If I am able to wash my cup, if I am able to put my clothes in order, put my dirty clothes in there, you find that they are going to do those activities more often because they will want to be recognized and they will want to be able to receive the claps that come with it. So for example, if they do something right, you find that they are awarded, they're given a sweet or something. So you will find that they will tend to do this more because they have observed that once they do them, there is the possibility of getting a reward. So another thing is outcome expectation. So you find that individuals are more likely to practice a desired behavior if they believe the benefits of performing that behavior will outweigh the cost. So you find that from time to time, sometimes people do certain things because of the expectation of a specific reward either in future. So you'll find that the community, they know that if we are able to plant crops at this time, we might receive, for example, if another organization has told us to plant these crops and they're going to come and buy to sell to the bigger market, you'll find that most people will be encouraged to farm so that they can be able to also benefit from this kind of situation. So there is also the self-efficacy. So you find that individuals are more likely to practice a desired behavior if they perceive that they have the necessary skills and capacity to do so. So you find that some people specifically do things because they are good at them. So you find that if someone is very good at drawing, and that is the idea behind creative skills, you find that if people know that I have the capacity to draw and draw so well, you'll find that from time to time, they're going to take more time to create better drawings, to get better at it, because they believe in themselves and they understand that by doing it, they're going to get better at it. So you find that this theory may be more appropriate for the evaluation phase of an emergency or post-emergency, as it highlights the importance of creating and also enabling structural and social environments. So in particular to this specific theory, you find that social behavioral change communication interventions should always promote models that practice the desired behaviors and also experience resulting benefits. That's what I was saying. Sometimes even giving people incentives encourages them to do some of the activities that you want them to do. So for example, if you're working on a model that, for example, as I said earlier, of buying crops from local farmers, you'll find that most of them will be encouraged to plant. So you find that this can be done through entertainment, education activities such as radio and TV dramas, and through community events in which people performing the desired behaviors are celebrated. So from time to time, you also come and show them that this month we are able to attain a certain food security within our community. You see, in the previous years, we have been having cases of hunger and famine, but this year, because of all the farmers who are planting crops, who are able to harvest, and our community did not run out of food. So you find that once you acknowledge them, it becomes more and more effective and efficient, and it also serves the community indirectly to improve their own livelihoods. So there is also the promoting the rewards and benefits that can be expected from engaging in desired behaviors, as we have explained. And then there is the provision of information, tools, and skills to increase people's perceived ability to engage in the desired behaviors. So for example, things like technical trainings that improve the skills of, for example, the youth who lost their job because of a disaster or an emergency. So you find that these are some of the things that enable communities or social behavioral change communication to be very effective. As I said, it is not only being used in emergency, but you can also use it in other projects to improve the efficiency of the implementation. So using social behavioral change communication and communication theories in emergencies, you find that in most cases and almost all cases, emergency situations are always time limited. So they're limited because they occur very fast. And at the end of the day, they're supposed also to be solved very fast in order to save lives, sustain lives, and even improve their livelihoods. So drawing on the established theories about human behavior, particularly human behavior, communication, and information seeking in emergency situation, you can be able to provide a preliminary step-by-step forward in the design and also development of the SBCC strategies, or the social behavioral change communication strategies, which can be able to effectively serve your community. As I said, there are very many theories, I think 6 or more in total, which can be able to be very specific to your communities. It is also important to take some time to learn more about those theories. So importantly, you find that theories can be used both in the planning and also the evaluation stages, because as I said earlier, you find that some of those theories also have frameworks, which also have indicators to help monitor change over time, and also the efficiency and effectiveness of the emergency response. And that is why you find that there are components of each theories can be used to inform issues such as issues to address in communication materials, which communication channels to use, particularly risk populations, indicators to include in the M&D planning of those activities. So these are always important factors to consider. And you find that for designing some of these things, we usually rely on the P process. So you find that the P process requires you to inquire first, to be able to understand the situation, the beneficiaries, the norms, before you even go to the design stage. And then you use it to your advantage to design those strategies, and then you test them also and to see their effectiveness and how they apply to the community. Then you mobilize the community to understand on how to use the information that you share to their advantage, and also evaluate and inform. So you can always refer to different components to understand more about this. And that is where we have shared this reference point, which you can look into after this. Also, there is the UNICEF's Behavior Change Communication in Emergency Toolkit. There is also one that was developed by USAID, the Social and Behavioral Change Communication for Emergency Prepared Implementation Kit, and so many more that you can refer to and gain more knowledge. So with that said, we have come to the end of the presentation of today. So I will take you very quickly through some of the humanitarian courses, and I will start with certificate course. Our certificate course is one that helps one understand some of the most important aspects of disaster risk reduction and management. So we cover a brief introduction of exactly what is DRRM, how we can be able to use it, so that is the significance of DRRM, some of the emerging trends in DRRM, and that is where we dive a little bit more in understanding the history of DRRM. That is where you also get a chance of looking into and reviewing some of the previous disasters and how they were handled. So it also enables you to get in touch with how things are done at the field level. So when it comes to module 2, we have a very comprehensive definition of terms, especially we define them at different levels and how to use them, including even in planning and designing of some of these emergency programs. And also we look into disasters and risk assessment. So we understand the types of disasters. We look at aspects of disaster management and the cycle itself. We look at risk assessment, and we also look into steps to consider in risk assessment, dependent on the kind of risk that is being assessed. And then we get into the DRRM diploma course. This is more advanced for people who are already in DRRM and they need some of these strategies to help implement. And that is why we start with the gender-based DRRM, which helps you to have a very good introduction into gender-based DRRM and the elements of the same. So it allows you to understand how you can be able to analyze issues of gender, including sharing some of the most important gender analysis questions that you need to ask when it comes to creating some of the gender-based DRRM programs, and sometimes even efficient programs, not only disaster risk reduction, but also in the development of other programs. Then there is addressing the gender issues and issues of gender equality. And also it gives you a very specific skill on how to implement a gender responsive approach. So the second module takes you through the DRRM frameworks. Right now we are just from talking on to how important frameworks are when it comes to the work of social behavioral change and communication. So when you look at DRRM frameworks, we look into more of understanding the framework and also understanding the different frameworks that have been used over time when it comes to disaster risk reduction and management, some of the things that we have learned from them, and some of the things that are applicable to some of the change that we want to see. And you find that we get into detail of also understanding the Yokohama strategy, the Hyogo framework for action that was used before 2015, and currently the Sendai framework that we have been using since 2015, which is supposed to go all through to 2030, which enables you to understand the global targets related to disaster risk reduction, the guiding principle, the priority areas, and the roles of different stakeholders who are involved in disaster risk reduction and emergency management. So the third module gets into the concept of displacement. So you find that in the concept of displacement, this is where we discuss more about refugees and IDPs and how to better handle those situations, even the understanding some of the principles that are important when it comes to handling refugees and IDPs. Then we look at humanitarianism at a deeper level, and that is where we get into the most important aspects of emergencies. That is WASH in emergencies. We look into water in emergencies. How do we distribute it? How do we ensure that it is safe? How do we help people? Because we all know that water is life. So it becomes a very important factor in sustaining life, especially in emergencies. We also look at other humanitarian considerations in emergency situations. We look at issues of food in emergency, where we look into food security, food control, food safety and nutrition, which are very important aspects. Then last but not least, in that module, we cover health in emergencies. There are very many health issues. So we look into health systems and infrastructures, how to control communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases. So this enables you to be able to plan and also advise in the best way on how to mitigate some of the emergency situation. And last but not least, in that we have the module 4, which enables you to understand on how to set up an emergency response. So that is where we get into the concept of disaster management. We look at disaster management cycle. We go a little bit deeper and look at the core humanitarian standards that govern people operating in the field, especially when it comes to humanitarians and development professionals. We also look at the response process. So, and that is where I had mentioned earlier while we started this training, the coordination aspect of the response process, which is an important aspect to any individual and organization working in the humanitarian aid field. And then there is the needs assessment and analysis, which is time bound also. And then we also look at the strategy and program design, the implementation, and the monitoring, evaluation, and accountability and learning aspects. And in most cases, we remember that monitoring, evaluation, and accountability and learning is a subject well taught in humanitarian courses at different levels, including the certificate, the diploma level, and the postgraduate level. So at this moment, I would like to dive directly into the question and answers segment. So feel free to raise your hand and we will select you to ask your question. So thank you.
The occurrence of any kind of disaster leads to devastating consequences. Disasters may lead to deaths, injuries, destructions of properties, diseases, mass displacements, loss of infrastructure, and social and economic disruption. According to UNDRR, the onset of disasters between 1998 to 2017 led to the death of 1.3 million people while affecting a population of 4.4 billion people across the globe. Geophysical events such as tsunamis, earthquakes, cyclones, floods, landslides, droughts, as well as man-made disasters such as water pollution, disease epidemics, and urban fires were responsible for most fatalities. It might be hard to prevent a hazard from occurring, but through the use of disaster risk reduction and management skills, a hazard can be prevented from turning into a disaster. This would also help in mitigating its impacts by increasing resilience among the affected communities. Undertaking a professional course in DRRM prepared by Humanitarian Global will help you develop in-depth knowledge in this professional area. Among the covered modules and units include Introduction to DRRM. In the first module, you will get to understand what DRRM is, history of DRRM, significance of DRRM and emerging trends in DRRM. In the second module, comprehensive definition of terms and concepts in DRRM, the learner will develop an in-depth understanding of all terms used in DRRM such as program terms, emergency terms and DRRM terms. In the third module, disaster and risk assessment, the learner will get to learn more about types of disasters, disaster management, risk assessment and steps to consider in risk assessments. Apply for this course today by visiting our website www.humanitarianglobal.com for more details.
Thank you, Marlene, for that. Thank you for guiding us through. And just maybe before we allow our participants to speak, I think we have a question on the Q&A. Marlene, are you there with me?
Yes, I am here with you. So the question is, who are the stakeholders that either in control to be consulted or informed during disaster preparedness and management? At the end of the day, when we talk about stakeholders, we are referring to the people who are either affected by the situation, those people who live in that specific community. So stakeholders are the community beneficiaries, the administration, the government, the organizations working within that area. Those are the kind of people that you need to inform with that information. And in most cases, the community is the general public.
Thank you for that. And to our participants, I still encourage you to send in your questions or comments or any feedback. For the questions, you can send them on the Q&A section. For any comment on the feedback, we can proceed to the chat section where we can drop our comments and feedback. Okay, at this time, I can see a few hands raised up. You can proceed to allowing them to speak. I can see Ahmed Mayaki. Ahmed, are you there with us? You may unmute your microphone.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Ahmed.
Good morning to everyone. I guess it's already getting afternoon for those of you in Kenya.
It's around 11:23, so we are heading to the afternoon.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's been a very, very clear presentation, I must say. Well done to the presenter. Well, my question revolves around the issue of message development, particularly talking about the first model of the social meditated model, that taking cognizance of the social media usage. How do we resist the temptation, to because we're always in a hurry in an emergency situation of giving out information, and a lot of times, particularly during the COVID pandemic, where a lot of fake news and misinformation has gone to the audience, which largely has led to a lot of panic, causing a lot of confusion. Instead of addressing emergencies, we have led into creating more concerns. As I personally have conducted a research, we're always in a hurry, particularly in message development, and we end up, creating panics. So how do we resist this temptation to give out information while managing the
Sorry, we lost you, Ahmed.
issue of time frame? What we send out to public is not fake. We do not mislead the public and then thereby causing more panic and leading to more casualties, because if you give out information that are untrue through panic, people with very critical health conditions can be worsened, and that can lead to more death, not from the disaster or from the emergencies, but from the information that we have given that is incorrect.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for that. In most cases, that's why I was saying that, sometimes we have to find the theory that relates to our community the most. You can find that sometimes even not all people can be able to even access social media, especially in the communities that we work with, especially the people who have been able to work in remote areas. So when you use, for example, if you use a specific influencer that you share information with, it is proper for your audience to know that this is one of our reliable sources, and this is someone who we are going to be sharing this information with. So if you want to get verified information, it is prudent that you rely on information coming from this source. It's the same way that most governments told most citizens to rely on information that is being relayed by the WHO and the corresponding ministries of health of specific countries, so that they can be able to get specific information related to the pandemic. They can be able to understand some of the aspects. And some of them even created, what can I say, hotlines for calling in case something was not clear. Some of them even created ways of messaging where people can be able to access the right information. So it is important that you also look at something that relies or can be reliant to your community. And that's why I say that there are 6 different theories, and we are not supposed to rely on one specific. As a matter of fact, you can even combine a number of them just to ensure efficiency. And that's why it is important to communicate the right information to the right, for example, beneficiaries and stakeholders. So I don't know if I have been able to answer you, Ahmed. Ahmed, feel free to unmute.
Okay. Well, I understand what you're talking about. Sometimes some of these influencers across, I do not know for other countries, but for Nigeria, we influencers get the temptation of always giving out information at the speed of light without verifying the processes. Traditional media, for instance, you have ethical standards where information is verified. You can cross-check information before giving it out. People are ethically responsible in giving out whatever information. Now, these influencers, I'm a media person, so I'm sorry if I'm referring to a lot of the ethical standards in media practice.
No problem.
Now, a lot of influencers a lot of them, or I would say, since I don't have any empirical evidence to show, but a number of influencers do not have any kind of professional background to understand the ethical processes of verifying information. They just get information and they dish it out. So sometimes as professionals, let me say, we must be very careful in selecting or identifying our influencers because they might mislead the audience. Yes, they might be very influential in a given community or to a particular audience, but their inability to verify some of this information, could be very, very harmful to the community. We have seen quite a number of research conducted across the world, like during the hurricane disaster in the United States of America, where people give out information through Twitter handles. And then when the national emergency management of the American government, responded to such emergencies, they discovered they were just, very untrue information. And that has delayed the process. That has diverted their attention from the rescue operations. So largely what I am saying is we must be very careful in selecting, our influencers. And then, like you have emphasized earlier, during the communication development, we must also be very careful to verify, to cross-check over and over again to ensure that whatever we're giving out to the public is something that we're very sure. If not, will be more harmful, will cause more havoc to a given situation in an emergency than even the information that we're giving us. So information is very critical in the process of not just early warning system, but also in the rescue operation when disaster strike.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. That's why I was saying, you see, for example, in our country, we have people who we know we can rely on when it comes to specific informations. We have specific social media persons. For example, issues of UNICEF, their UNICEF ambassadors. Different organizations have their different ambassadors who rely or relay specific information related to certain aspects. So you find that that's why I was saying, for example, if you use a specific influencer, it is also good to tell your community that this person we are in agreement with, they are going to be sharing verified information with the general public. Plus, I think those are also, as you said, issues of ethics where people people sometimes sign non-disclosure agreement of how information is, for example, given. But at the end of the day, these people are able to communicate verified information because it is important that people get the right information. There are so many social media influencers who also share the wrong information from time to time because they have a following and they are relying on that specific aspect. So it is also important for you as an organization, if you feel that is the theory that you might use to your advantage, it is good to also identify the right people to share this information. So I don't know if I've been able to answer you, Ahmed.
Yes, that's very okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you for attending this webinar. We always feel welcome to attend future webinars.
Thank you. Thank you.
So before we proceed to the next person, let's look into some of the Q&A questions. So someone has asked is there a difference between SBCC and RCCE? For those of you who do not know RCCE, it's risk communication and community engagement. Yes, there is a difference between SBCC and RCCE because, as the word just says, risk communication. Risk communication is used specifically for relaying risk-related information to the community. That is, it involves a series of risk assessment and it is only focused on risk. But remember that social behavioral change communication, as I said earlier, it cannot only be used in disaster situations. It's just that we can use it to our advantage during disaster situations. So you find that it is important for you to understand the difference so that you can be able to use the right information, especially when communicated. And SBCC, as I said earlier, and even was giving different examples, not only related to emergencies. You can always use it to effectively communicate even in other community interventions, projects, and programs. So I think that clarifies the difference between SBCC and RCCE. So how do you, another question is, how do you view the DRR approach should fit on a global scale in order to lessen, mitigate further risk of another possible pandemic of any nature? At this moment, I believe that there is a lot that is currently being developed, especially when it comes to handling pandemics, which is different organizations, including the UN, especially WHO, that are trying to develop frameworks on how to best handle the possibility of different pandemics. Remember that we have experienced different pandemics before, and it's just a ability to be able to compare the two and also find the best possible solutions that worked for different communication activities. So once they are able to rely that information, I am sure it is going to be public, and different governments and countries are going to use the same to develop national approaches to such or similar disasters in future. So that is something that is dependent on very many actors in the development, humanitarian, civil societies to be able to come up with. So another question is, how can early warning system information be disseminated to those who are at risk in rural areas if there is no communication system that we can deliver information to them? As I said earlier, there are 6 different theories that you can use to your advantage. And some of them require even use of local station, use of chiefs, community mobilizers. There is many that you can use to your advantage to relay the right information to people who are affected. Because as I said, early warning system means that this issue has already been detected earlier. So you can be able to find the best ways to communicate this information to the people who are at risk. So it does not only rely on social media, television, and all that. Sometimes it's even having the community meetings, barazas, and relaying the right information to the people using the right channels. So someone has asked, what is your exit strategies when disaster happen? I have to say that that is dependent on the disaster and the community that you're even dealing with. And as I said earlier, it is good to build the resilience of the people, build their capacity so that even once you exit, it is easier for you to be able to exit without the community being over-reliant on your efforts and activities. So building their capacity is one of the exit strategies when disasters happen, and one of the most efficient strategies of exiting once you have been able to sort out that disaster. Also remember that in most cases, organization exit once they have been able to assess and see that this community can be able to run sustainably, and in case they need support, there are ways in which they can reach out. So in most cases, an exit strategy is dependent on on the ability to build the capacity of the communication. So someone has asked which is the best method to mitigate floods. That is dependent on early warning systems, especially related to weather patterns, issues of climate change in different areas that might directly and indirectly affect the target area. So it is always good, as I said earlier, to find the early warning system that informs your community on the, for example, floods. Maybe the national government or a different NGO or the meteorological department or the geological department and other institutions might be able to share that message, and they can be able to help you start preparing early when it comes to issues of floods. So when it comes to how, someone has asked, how do you develop an early warning system to the community level? That is dependent on the community needs, the financial capacity, but in most cases, instead of developing a new one, it is always good to look at existing ones. And if they're reliable, it is just good to collaborate so that they can be able to share the right information at the right time to serve the specific communities. So early warning systems, sometimes, it requires equipment and whatnot. That's why even most countries only have few meteorological departments. It's because sometimes they depend on very expensive equipment. Some of them need to be customized and so much more. So it is always good to look. And in most cases, early warning systems are developed if there is no existing way of accessing information related to the warning that you want to monitor. Someone has asked, how do you manage this information sharing in emergencies where there is no network hotlines? I think we have been able to answer that. We say that there are different ways of communicating to the communities. That is even having community meetings, having community volunteers to share, using community mobilizers, and sometimes community health workers. There are so many people within the community who you can give the right information, train them, and also ensure that people at the community level receive credible information related to any specific thing that you want to address. So we are going to answer some of the questions of the people who have raised their hands. So I can see Khan, Click Smiler, So can click Smiler, kindly feel free to unmute your microphone and proceed with asking your question.
All right, thank you so much for the great presentation, and have known about early warning signs, mostly with health conditions. There are some health conditions that we also talk about early warning signs, especially with chronic infections, non-communicable diseases. However, it was interesting to also learn about early warning signs in other environmental and social aspects. Now, you did mention that we can use incentives, especially at the community level, to get people engaged in activities or events that will benefit them in order to mitigate some of these risks and events. Now, my question is this. Why should we really use incentives to get people motivated for their own good, especially when we are dealing with adults? Because consequently, they might look at the benefit from the incentive point of view and not maybe from the risks that is being exposed to them. This is just to give an example, like in political situations where a politician comes and then gives rice, Maggi, soap, I mean, in order to lure people to vote. Voting is their right. But then tomorrow, when the incentives are no longer there and other people are coming in with other risk mitigation activities or events, there is that fear that these people might be comparing with the previous one or might not adopt it because they do not have a direct benefit. So I would really want you to clarify more on how sustainable of using incentives to get people adopt activities of risks or activities that can reduce risks, how possible it is to sustain it and how reliable that is. Thank you. I don't know if
Thank you very much, Click Smiler. Depends on how exactly you view incentives. Remember that incentives don't have to be monetary or, for example, what can you say? Something that you give people directly. Incentives can be, for example, in the case of agriculture, you might intend to give them subsidized fertilizers to boost their agricultural production, so that you can encourage them to learn more about some of the extension methods used within their areas. Because once they get their fertilizer, you can train them on how to use it. Look at how different it is affecting their or increasing their harvest. So use of incentives in most cases, what I meant, I did not mean by giving them something like a reward. In most cases, when it comes to reward, we prefer more of recognition. When you tell them this person was able, for example, when it comes to issues of emergency response, you find that sometimes when it comes to issues like flooding, you find that there are a number of people who are very good swimmers or divers. So they help save some of the people who are drowning or some of that sort. So you might find that people are very trying to do their best in order to save as many people as they can. And you find that one person needs recognition because when people are drowning, maybe they save 12 people or a number of people. So it is good to even show recognition. So what I meant by incentives is some of the activities that you can do to motivate people towards doing certain activities that might affect their livelihoods or behaviors in one way or another, or help improve the way they conduct a specific activity. Don't know if I am clear on that. Click Smiler.
yes, very, very clear. I was
Sorry?
maybe giving some physical, but I think it's very clear now. Thank you.
Yes, so I hope that is also clear to everyone else. Thank you very much for highlighting that, Click Smiler. We appreciate your participation in this webinar. We have Julius Liu. Julius Liu, kindly feel free to unmute your mic and proceed with asking your question. Liu, Julius Liu, please feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question. So let's get back to answering some of the questions that are on the question and answer segment. So someone has asked, what kind of early warning system would you set up when a disaster happens? As I have said earlier, it is most important to rely on the already existing early warning systems, because as I said, it might be quite expensive to build a new early warning system from scratch. It is not easy to just get equipment that are able to detect tectonic movements and also have people who can interpret them and be able to use it to give reliable and verifiable information. So in most cases, it is good to rely on the existing early warning systems. So someone is asking, when a river is flowing, which method would you recommend to prevent the river from bursting, such as constructing river banks or seeping river levels by keeping in mind to your financial budget? So as you have just highlighted, thinking of the financial budget, in most cases, communities, in most cases, we rely on bigger organizations or governments to help mitigate things of like the construction of dikes to divert water. So in most cases, it is prudent for you to help these people be able to move from flood-prone areas to higher grounds to avoid being affected by cases of floods. So when we think of financial budget, in most cases, we will most definitely rely on other aspects as compared to constructing solutions from scratch. So first of all, before you're able to get enough funds to create such solutions, which most of them are more engineer-based, so they require more professional intervention, we prefer to just help save as many lives and also help people come from the flood-prone areas to higher grounds where they can be able to survive without being affected with floods. So someone has asked, what are the objectively verifiable indicators in early warning systems? As I said, there is a wide range of early warning systems, and I don't think that early warning systems are dependent on indicators. Remember that indicators are either qualitatively or quantitatively verifiable, measurable aspects of a project or an intervention or a program. So early warning systems do not rely on indicators, but your project definitely will. And when it comes to issues of identifying change or in a project or all that, that is where we depend on indicators. So early warning systems are basically supposed to identify situations that might cause disasters and be able to relay that information to different stakeholders to get to people, to the general public and the people in the community. Someone has asked if it is important for community-based organizations to take part when talking about flood management. That is true. It is always important because they are the kind of people who are supposed to help the communities build back at the end of the day. So it is important to always have them rely on reliable information that is given by the early warning systems, the government, and other reliable information systems such as the ones that have been built by institutions. So
thank you, Marlene, for guiding us through the questions. And we are still urging our participants to raise their hands and still feel free to ask questions. You can send them through the Q&A. For any comment or feedback, you are encouraged to send them on the chat. We are here ready to answer any and all of your questions. We're still giving you a chance to do that, and I can see a hand up. Michael Lege, are you there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, you may proceed to ask your question, Michael.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance, and I would like to thank also the presenter. And I asked 2 questions, and seems some still need more clarification. With the first one was about the stakeholders. and in the event of a disaster, especially in the early warning, that those stakeholders who are in control, there are some who are expected to be consulted, and then also there are some who are to be informed. Whether they're all the same stakeholders, or there are some who could be acting in these three important areas of control, consultation, and information. Then secondly, the presenter also said there are no indicators in the early warning system. So that what then it is to be monitored and what is to be evaluated, and what are the supposed to be the aspect of accountability and learning in the event of disaster or in the early warning system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. So what I meant when I said that there are no indicators in the early warning system, what I meant is there are no indicators that you're supposed to look at when you're trying to find an early warning system, because at the end of the day, you find that these early warning systems detect, for example, intensities in, for example, a tsunami or a cyclone. So definitely there are certain indicators that the engineering department has set for us to know at which level might that disaster occur, and what are some of the things that we can mitigate. And in most cases, they won't tell you much. They will just tell you that this is, for example, they have categories, for example, a 9 point something when it comes to the vibrations that are being, so they have their own indicators. But in most cases, remember that these are not the kind of indicators that you're supposed to communicate to your community. You're supposed to use them to help you derive solutions for the affected community. You as a professional, most people will not even, for example, when I talk of medicine, some of us do not even understand some of the statements that have been used to help derive the COVID-19 pandemic over time, because it has developed and it has had different strands. Most of us do not have the technical capability to understand some of those technical stuff, but the different agency took it up in a way that they could be able to relay the right information to us for us to use, so that we can be able to reduce the infections, we can be able to keep ourselves and our families safe. So, because those are the things that matter to the community. And when I talk of indicators, indicators are there in the different frameworks that is supposed to help when it comes to issues of social change and behavior, because that is why I said the different frameworks have been developed, including even toolkits for implementation. So these are supposed to help you be able to, instead of having to develop new indicators, you can use the existing ones, because they have been able to identify ways in which you can use them at different community levels to inform the project and even the program, so that you can effectively run it at the community level. And that's why I usually say that different indicators can be able to be used at different community levels, because even communities are set up differently because of their different economical capabilities, the current main economic activity, their social relations, and so much more. So those are the kind of indicators that you are supposed to identify that resonate with the community that you're serving, and what kind of behavioral change are you targeting with the specific information that you're sharing. When it comes to stakeholders, remember that stakeholders are all the people who have a part to play in the emergency response. And that's why I said it is a very huge list of stakeholders, and you find that different organizations deal with different stakeholders. Sometimes stakeholders are organizations working within the same area as you're working. Stakeholders are the beneficiaries, they are the local administration, they are the governing bodies within those areas. So sometimes it is good to even rely on professional information for example, the information that comes from meteorological departments on the impending change in weather patterns and how they might affect your community. So stakeholders refer to all the people who might have a part to play in any intervention, in any project, in any program. Michael?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm partially satisfied, and I hope I will follow it up maybe in the certificate or diploma courses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. We are happy to have you, and we will be happy to serve you as you take your course, and you can always feel free to ask any question. So thank you for also attending this webinar. We are happy to have you here, and your contribution is also paramount.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marlin, for that. And due to time, allow us to take your questions to the community forum. I will share the link where you can log in, as Anthony showed you earlier, and you can post in your questions, and we are going to answer you from there. And at this time, allow me to invite Anthony. Are you there with us, Anthony?
Thank you so much, Eric, and to all of our participants for following up with the session. It has been a very informative one. And as we said, sometimes it's normally hard for us to tackle all the questions here. And that's why we have a community that we are encouraging you to join, so that you can continue posting your questions there. And that would be easy for us to continue responding to them. So thank you so much for attending. And what I want to wind up with is just to take you through again on the process on how to sign up for the communities. So yeah, great. So what happens, just make sure that you can go to the Humanitarian Global website. So that is the initial step for you, or even follow the link that has been shared on the chat section. So we keep on sending the same link to you. So make sure that first of all, you can locate the tab HG community. That is a Humanitarian Global community. Click on that link, and then you're going to be redirected to the forum. So the screen that will show up, if you have not enrolled or maybe you have not signed up, that would be a sign up page. So make sure that you can sign up. It's a quick process. Type your email, your username, make sure there is no spacing in the username. Type your full name and also a password. Once that has been done, you're going to get all the other prompts for you to activate your account. Once you've joined, this is how the forum does look like. So we do have very many forums because we tackle different areas, starting from monitoring and evaluation, accountability and learning. We have water, sanitation and hygiene, food security and nutrition in emergencies, disaster risk reduction and management. When it comes to health, we have maternal, infant and young child nutrition. We also do have procurement and supply chain management, among very many others. So make sure that you can locate the forum that you want to join. So for this one, you might be interested in the disaster risk. So make sure that you can log in, and then you can click on that category. There's a link for you to introduce yourself. So just click on reply. So here you can just mention your name, your country, the organization that you're working for, your role in that organization, and then you can post your feedback. Once that has been done, make sure that now you can go and check on the topics again. So in that forum, you can see like today's topic is already posted there. So where we were talking about the SBCC and in emergencies and some of the early warning systems. So if you have a question, it's very easy for you because you just need to click on reply to that topic by typing your question. So once we get that feedback, we're going to respond to your inquiry. So run there, make sure that you can follow that link, go and register and be part of this forum. And the good thing, there's no restriction on the forums that you can be part of. There's no restriction on the kind of topics that you can explore. Even in WASH, you can go and see the kind of discussions we've been having. You can even see some links to past webinars that we have had because we normally post them there. You might be interested in monitoring and evaluation. Quite a lot has been happening. You can go there and also follow up with the discussion. You might be interested in SDGs, and that is the Sustainable Development Goals. You can also go there and make sure that you can follow up see the amazing things that people are doing out there when it comes to the SDGs, the responses, the feedback from different participants. You're going to enjoy the discussions. So it's quite a lot. And also when it comes to the website, as we always say, for instance, when it comes to the recorded version, we have the YouTube channel. So there's the link. So everything is there on the website. So make sure that you can click a link on the YouTube icon, and then that would direct you to where you can find these and among many other sessions that we have had previously. So you can see all the recorded sessions, and it's up to you. You can select the one that you want to watch, and then you can review them. So we do have these kind of sessions for different areas, and someone like Khan Smiler has been attending all the sessions. They are very informative, and we encourage you, as much as you might be specializing in this area, there's no harm for you to gain knowledge in also the other areas. So make it a point that you can always follow up with this training so that you can be posted on the same. And then as we wind up, as we said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The entire iceberg lies here with us in terms of the content, the skills, the kind of capacity that you can be able to get or maybe build from these training. And that would mean that always feel free to reach out to us. We are here to guide you, to help you get started with this training. You want to interact with one of our professionals, like the presenter of the day, you have an inquiry, you can always write to us, and then we're going to set up a meeting so that we can listen to you. So very many courses, humanitarian courses on the website. Make sure that you can go there and sign up. For instance, if you want a certification and further training, you can choose a certificate level training in what we had today, and you're going to see all the information there. So you can click on that specific course that you want to undertake. You can see all the information, including how much is it for the course, and then you can even see the course outline. And for you to apply, just make sure that you can click on that link. So there's a button for you to apply. There's a form that you need to fill, a very simple one, and that would mean that you're going to be in a position to be able to submit your details, and then our team, they are going to follow up with you. Also, we have the diploma level, and for the certificate level, it's 500 USD, taking a period of 3 months. And the good thing, being part of this meeting, we'll give you a 10% discount, meaning that you can pay 450 instead of 500 for you to study this course. When it comes to the diploma, the tuition fees are 1,000 USD, but if you've been part of this meeting, we're going to give you a 10% discount, and that would mean that you can pay 900 USD. So reach out to our team, hurry up. We have limited slots for the month of August. Make sure that you can reach out to us as soon as you can. And we're going to guide you so that you can get to build your capacity. So that is it from Humanitarian Global. We wish you the very best as you embark on reflecting on what you've been able to be trained on today. Tomorrow, we're going to be sharing the recorded version. Make sure you can be there on the YouTube. Subscribe. And once you subscribe, you're going to be the first one to get a notification once we publish that video. And also, we're going to do an email so that you can also get the links for you to download the slides. And maybe something some of us might have faced a challenge before. If you get the video, how you get the slides, make sure that you can go to, let me just try to use this one as an example. Make sure that you can check on the video description. So click there, and then there's a link for you to download the slides. So if you click on that link, you're going to be redirected to where you can download the slides. So that's how you get the slides. Even go to the YouTube, review all the videos, and then on the video description, there's a link for you to download the slides. So with that said, I wish you the very best. Thank you so much for attending. Let's continue spreading word about Humanitarian Global. You've been very supportive to us, and we look forward to seeing you join for these amazing courses. And thank you. And from us, bye-bye for now. And we look forward to hearing from you, and hopefully see you on board for these programs. So thank you so much, and bye-bye. And for now, I just leave you with a video so that you can see what we cover in the certificate level. So thank you so much.
The occurrence of any kind of disaster leads to devastating consequences. Disasters may lead to deaths, injuries, destructions of properties, diseases, mass displacements, loss of infrastructure and social and economic disruption. According to UNDRR, the onset of disasters between 1998 to 2017 led to the death of 1.3 million people while affecting a population of 4.4 billion people across the globe. Geophysical events such as tsunamis, earthquakes, cyclones, floods, landslides, droughts as well as man-made disasters such as water pollution, disease epidemics and urban fires were responsible for most fatalities. It might be hard to prevent a hazard from occurring, but through the use of disaster risk reduction and management skills, a hazard can be prevented from turning into a disaster. This would also help in mitigating its impacts by increasing resilience among the affected communities. Undertaking a professional course in DRRM prepared by Humanitarian Global will help you develop in-depth knowledge in this professional area. Among the covered modules and units include Introduction to DRRM. In the first module, you will get to understand what DRRM is, history of DRRM, significance of DRRM and emerging trends in DRRM. In the second module, comprehensive definition of terms and concepts in DRRM. The learner will develop an in-depth understanding of all terms used in DRRM such as program terms, emergency terms and DRRM terms. In the third module, Disaster and Risk Assessment, the learner will get to learn more about types of disasters, disaster management, risk assessment and steps to consider in risk assessments. Apply for this course today by visiting our website www.humanitarianglobal.com for more details.